Alright, let me zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to give a quick tutorial on counting atoms. So we started off with this on Friday with we just pretty much wrote in the name of the element just by the symbol. So like Na, we already know that stands for sodium. The H is for hydrogen. The C is for carbon. And the O is for oxygen. So we did that to complete this section, and then we moved to this section. So this is like an introduction to counting. You see that these examples only have subscripts, and we did this in the PowerPoint first. So the subscript tells you how many atoms you have. So I have the 2 directly behind the H. That means that my element is going to be hydrogen. And I have 2 of them. Wherever you don't see a subscript, like sulfur, that's understood to be 1. Okay, so this would only be 1 sulfur atom. Okay, and then oxygen. Oxygen has a subscript of 4, so I have 4 atoms of oxygen. And then my total 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. And ammonia, there's no subscript for nitrogen. So for nitrogen, there's 1. And then for hydrogen, there's 3. So 3 plus 1 is 4. We did the same thing right here with subscript, so I'm going to skip that. And I'm going to move into coefficients. Okay, so I'm just going to flip to the back here. The coefficient tells you, that's this one right here, the largest number. It tells you how many molecules. So this is equivalent to saying I have this. Okay. 2 of this means I have 2 molecules of copper sulfate. The 2 belongs to the copper, the S, and the O. So everything behind the coefficient is doubled. So of copper, I'm only going to have 2 because I don't have any subscripts. So that would be 2 times 1, which is 2. Sulfur, same thing. There's just 2 sulfur. And then for oxygen, now here's where it gets a little different. You have to multiply coefficients and subscripts in order to get the number of atoms. So 2 times 4 means I have 8 oxygen. And that would be 12 total atoms. Okay? So here I have a coefficient of 3, which means everything behind it is tripled. So for carbon, I have 3. And then for oxygen, I have 3, which makes it 6. Okay, magnesium. I have a coefficient of 4 and no subscript, so just 4. And chlorine, 4 times 2 is 8. Alright, and that's going to be 12. Alright. So here we are introducing parentheses, and we're going to combine the coefficient, subscript, and the parentheses together. I have a plan. I can work on this paper. So before I do it here, I'm just going to do some practice over here. So let's say I have 2 Fe SO4 and then 2. This 2 is going to be distributed into the parentheses, which means every element inside of the parentheses is also going to be doubled. Okay? So what I like to do is I like to write all of my elements down. And then I just write the numbers that belong to them. All of them are going to get this 2 because of that coefficient. So 2, 2, 2. Now, sulfur is also going to get this 2. It's going to get something extra because it has the parentheses. The subscript is outside of the parentheses. So that's going to be 2 times 2. Oxygen has its own 4, and then it has an additional 2. So you have 2 iron, you have 4 sulfur, and then you have 16 oxygen. Okay. So it's easier to write down everything that belongs to that particular atom and then count from there. So I'm going to go back to my paper here. Fix it. Alright, so there's no coefficient here. So my calcium is just going to be 1. My oxygen and hydrogen, however, have a subscript outside of the parentheses. Oxygen is 2, and then hydrogen is 2. So I have 5 total. Now in the next one we have a coefficient. So everything is going to get 3. So calcium has nothing else, so it's just going to be 3 calcium. Nitrogen is inside of the parentheses, so this 2 is going to go to nitrogen and oxygen. 3 times 2 is 6. And then for oxygen, you have 3 times 3, which is 9, and then times 2, which makes this 18. Okay? So don't forget to distribute the 2 into those parentheses, okay? So it's going to be 27. Let's make sure. Yeah, okay. All right, this one, no coefficient. So we have calcium. We have chlorine. Remember, that's never going to be iodine there. And oxygen. Calcium is 1. Chlorine gets a 2, and also oxygen. So just 2 and 2. I also felt like a lot of y'all struggled with the section right below that I'm going to go over. Okay. So let's take a look. Element, molecules, and compounds. An element is just one type. Molecule is 2 or more. And then a compound is 2 or more, and they have to be different. They cannot be the same. So I'm going to start with elements. How many different circles do I have is how many different elements I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 2 circles are the same, and so are these 2. So they have to be the same element, like H2O, 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. How many molecules? How many of them are in groups of 2 or more? 1, 2. Now, out of those groups, do they at least have 2 different circles, 2 different elements? 1, 2, 1, 2. So 2 compounds. How many different circles here? 1 and 2. These are the same. Molecules, none of them are in groups of 2 or more, so 0 and 0. Elements here, I have 3 different patterns. No molecules and no compounds. So that was it for the guided, well, no, actually not. Yeah, that was the guided practice on how to count atoms. And then this is what we did after. So here's the independent practice. So I'll just show you how to get started here. And also, correction, we're not going to be doing number 18, so there's a typo there. So we won't be doing 18, so you won't use one of these chemical formulas. Okay, so let's start with these. So my element is calcium here, the first one, and there's 1. There's no subscript and no coefficient. The next one is carbon, and there is 1. No subscript, no coefficient. And now I have oxygen that has a subscript of 3, so I have 3 of them. So that's pretty much all we did for this section, is just counting the atoms. So that's all you would do there. Here is the same thing as the practice. How many different circles do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different prints. How many of them are in groups of 2 or more? Well, just 1. And do I have at least 2 different circles? I do. So I have 1 compound. Number 12, how many different elements? Well, I have this group, but they're all the same. So 1 element, 2 elements. So I have 2. How many of them are grouped in sets of 2 or more? Well, just 1, because this one is single. And do they at least have 2 different circles? Well, no. This entire group has the same circle, so I would have no compounds. Okay? And then at the bottom, you're reading the statement, and you're matching it with the chemical formula. So magnesium sulfate is the chemical name of Epsom salt. This compound contains 1 magnesium and sulfur and 4 oxygen. So this is the chemical formula. I have 1 atom of magnesium, 1 sulfur, a subscript of 4 on oxygen, making it 4 oxygen. Okay? And we turn this paper into me. The next thing that we did was this. Okay, so it was front and back, it was 20 of them. But today, you had to do this one. So once again, it was atoms, elements, molecules, and compounds. How many atoms? Now, they added this in. I have to count all of the circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, how many elements? How many different circles? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many of them are in groups of 2 or more? Well, just these 2. And out of those groups, who has at least 2 different circles? Both of them do. So I have 2 compounds. That should get you through those. And then counting atoms. So the first one is done for us. You have to list the elements. I would then count the atoms, get the total, and molecule is very easy. The coefficient tells you how many molecules. So 1, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2. Coefficient of 3, 3 molecules. Okay. And now we're just counting. So this is magnesium, and then this is iodine. For magnesium, I have 3. I have a coefficient of 3. And then for iodine, I have 3 times 2, which gives me 6. And my total is 9. Okay, so you're just counting atoms again. And then on the back, we did balanced and unbalanced equations. And I will do this in another video.